We are now going to talk about verbs in Italiano. When you start reading or learning Italian, one of the first things you discover is that you can leave out the subject in front of a verb. What does it mean? Let's look at English. If you were to learn English, one of the very first rules that you learn is that in English the verb must always be preceded by the subject. You must always say who is performing the action that is indicated in the verb. Let's take, for instance, to talk, which in Italian is parlare. Let's start writing down the subjects: I, you, and third person, he, she. I is the first person singular, you second person singular, he and she third person singular. And then we have the plural, we, you guys, and they. So we have three persons in the singular and three in the plural. Don't call we fourth person and then fifth and sixth. No, it's only three persons. Three persons singular and three plural. When we use the verb, the form of the verb is identical for all the persons except for he or she, which adds an S. I talk, you talk, he or she talks, we talk, you talk, they talk. If we didn't use the pronouns I, we, whatever, we would not know who is doing the talking. Talk could be any of 5 possible subjects. So in order to avoid confusion, misunderstandings, it is obligatory to use the pronoun in front of the verb. That is not the case in Italian. Let's look at parlare, which means to talk, at the forms io parlo, tu parli, lui, lei parla. These are the singular, first, second, and third person. And then the plural is noi parliamo, voi parlate, and loro parlano. Well, we see that each verb form is different. The ending is different depending on the subject. We also see that the stem or the root of the verb parl never changes. It's only the ending. And all verbs like parlare, and there are hundreds, will behave the same way. So io will always end with o, and so forth. Now, since each person can be identified by the ending, very often speakers or writers leave out entirely the subject. They don't say io parlo. They simply say parlo, or parliamo, or parlano. The reader or the listener automatically knows who is doing the talking because it is in the form of the verb itself. Let's look now at the very first 2 verbs that you will encounter when you study Italian. Essere, avere. Essere, to be, avere, to have. These are irregular verbs. They do not have a pattern. They are unique in the way they are conjugated. Io sono, tu sei, lui è, lei è, noi siamo, voi siete, loro sono. Here we have probably the only case where the same verb form applies to to different persons in Italian, in the language. Io sono, loro sono. Is there a possibility for confusion here? Not really. And that's because io sono refers to a singular entity. Therefore, all of the elements, nouns, adjectives that go with io will always be in the singular form. Loro is plural, they, and all the elements will be plural. Therefore, the context itself will be sufficient to provide information, and there will be no confusion. So the same practice applies. Usually, very often, Italians simply leave out the subject pronoun and go by the verb form alone. Sono, sei, è, siamo, siete, sono. Let's look at avere. We write down the subject pronouns and the conjugation. Ho, hai, ha, abbiamo, avete, hanno. The same thing happens with avere, where people leave out the subjects and use simply the verb forms.